Good evening. Ashana Tova Mesuka, that we're getting close to Rosh Hashanah. This Motzoi Shabbos, we begin saying Slichos, and we say b'Motzoi Shabbos, Kidamnucha Tchila, that the Pietan said, I came to ask in the most dynamic way, Mechila, and I didn't wait, but we're doing it the very first night of Slichos, and that this is the beginning of the entire process. By Sfardim, they say Slichos from Rosh Chodesh Elul. They say it for 40 days, from Rosh Chodesh Elul till Erev Yom Kippur. But we, the Ashkenazim, paskin like the Ramah, and we begin with the Motzoi Shabbos. Sometimes it's the Motzoi Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, and sometimes it includes the next Shabbos, and then in the middle of that next week is Rosh Hashanah. It's not in that very first week. Sometimes Rosh Hashanah is on a Wednesday night, Thursday, and we begin a very short series of slichas. This year, we say at Motzoi Shabbos, we begin, and we go the whole week, and Rosh Hashanah isn't until the next Monday night, which means the long Seder of Slichos. Now, the one who really set that pace was Shimi ben Gera, who came publicly and insulted David HaMelech, and the Melech really had the right at that point to pull out a sword and to kill him, because someone, as the Rambam paskins, who was myriad b'malchus, is chayav misa. But David HaMelech did not kill him. What he did was, Shimi ben Gera, after a while, realized what he did. And this was brought about because of David HaMelech's son, who wanted to get rid of him. And Shimi was like the big name to follow him. So when it came to the Mechila, there were 3,000 people who wanted to ask David HaMelech Mechila for all of this rebellion episodes that took place. And Shimi made this statement, Ki damnuch, I am here first. And what the Meforshim teach us is we all know that there's somebody somewhere that we have to ask Mechila. It could be to a spouse, it could be to a child, it could be to Talmidim, it could be neighbors, and we push it off because it's very uncomfortable. We recognize our shortcoming, and we know that we do have to at some point do it, but we're not comfortable at it, so we wait for like the latest time that we could tuck in that mechila. So what we say the first Motzoi Shabbos of Slichas is Kidamnucha. It teaches us that when we owe an apology or a sincere mechila to someone, that we should not wait and push it off. Because part of that is setting the pace and the tone. And when we come to Rosh Hashanah, we want to come with as clean a slate as is possible. But you can't have a clean slate until you ask those who you recognize you have to ask Mechila. And therefore, we say the first Motzoi Shabbos, Ki damnucha Tchila. Now, the very first words of the Sedra this week, Parshas Ki Savo, is V'hoya ki Savo el ha'aretz. I've said to you a number of times that V'hoya is Simcha, Vayehi is Tsar. Why does it say over here, the Meforshim ask, the word V'hoya? It could have just started the Parsha, Ki Savo el ha'aretz, when you do come to Eretz Yisrael, and you remain there, and it's Li'olam Voed, it's with the Geula Shlema. But many times when we have a simcha or an auspicious event, we are grateful, we have the simcha, we dance, we celebrate, but after a certain amount of time, it dissipates, it disappears. We can be happy for an extra week after a chasna, we marry off a child, or we attend a very close friend's or a family simcha. But after the week or two or three, it's hardly like it happened. 3 weeks later, it's like it was 5 months before. But when we come after the Geula, say the Meforshim, and we come to Eretz Yisrael, it's for keeps. It's not going to disappear, and it's not going to slowly come off the radar in our minds or in our happiness. When we come after the Geula V'hoya, it's going to be a simcha, because Ki Savo el ha'aretz, you're coming permanently. It's not going to in a month wear off, or it's not going to wane and become forgotten. But the simcha and its heightened status will remain as the day we come to Eretz Yisrael, in our love of Eretz Yisrael and our appreciation of Eretz Yisrael. And that's why we say V'hoya. Now, we know that in this parsha, there is the tochacha. It's not as strong. The one in Vayikra is the main tochacha. Here is a repetition of what's going to be. And the same minhagim, the Balkany reads it himself, because the person who comes up for an aliyah, you're reading into him the parsha. That's the reason by the tochacha that the Baal Shem Tov used to, who was the Balkany, they used to pick the sickest person in his shul, in his shtibel, to get the aliyah. Because the Baal Shem Tov knew the secrets of the tochacha, and that really, instead of what it appears on the surface to be pure curses, it was brachas. And they had the person come up and say the bracha, have the aliyah. The Baal Shem Tov responded with the kriya of the tochacha, and that year the person who got that aliyah became completely healed and cured of his sickness, because the Baal Shem Tov was reading the deeper meaning in the tochacha, and he was able to transmit to the oila who he was reading into, who made the bracha, the secrets of the tochacha, and it healed him. And that's the reason why the Balatanya, who was also the Balkany, there was 1 year that the Balatanya in the tochacha, Parshas Ki Savo, was not home in his Beis HaMedrash. And therefore, another person stood in and laid that week the Parsha. And his son became sick right after Shabbos because his son appreciated and knew the secrets also of the Tochacha, and it was transmitted in being moitze, the Kriya of the Kriyas HaTorah of that Shabbos to everyone that was there. And he felt there was a terrible loss because his father used to be able to elevate the transmission, that everyone was given a breath of fresh air in hearing the Tochacha, because the one transmitting it knew the secrets of the Tochacha. And therefore, after there was this tremendous reading, their lives were uplifted with hatzlacha, with happiness, with successes, but the Shabbos that his father didn't lane. The other person was moitze the tzibur, but he had no idea what was going on in the world of high. And therefore, he was about to have a cold, he got the cold. It didn't prevent anything there. And that's why we take it seriously, but at the same token, we know that it is a parsha of bracha. Now, in the Tochacha, there are 11 stalemates that are said. What do I mean by stalemates? Before the Tochacha begins, there are 11 klolas. If someone does this, he's masig gevul of re'ehu. And at the end of every single pasuk, there's a samach. If you take note, you will see throughout Sedras, there's a pei or there's a samach at the end of a pasuk. The samach means that we have finished a statement and it's finished. The next pasuk has no connection to the pasuk before. At the end of a parsha, that's the statement that the parsha is finished, and there's a pei. But there's one pasuk that has an exception, that the 11 curses of the oror this, oror that, the last pasuk says oror, somebody who is mateh, mishpat, ger, yasom, v'almana. There's no samach, and it's the only one. There's no samach, and there's no pei, which means that it's connected to the next statement, which begins all the arroyos. Arroyos, immorality. So it talks about not to sway or be influenced. You know, sometimes people think that an almana, nebuch, or a yosem, they have no father, no family, sometimes to defend them. They're the weaker one. Oh, if my husband would have been there, this and this never would have happened. But she doesn't have nebuch, lo alinu, lo aleichem, a husband. So the power of having a samach at the end means that when it says somebody is cursed, or that he has a grocery store that he opened, and it's right next door to another grocery store, and it says oror masig gevul re'ehu v'omar kol omein, and there's a samach. It's a statement, it's a curse, and it's completed. It's finished. But the other statement of oror, mata mishpat ger, yasum va'almana, that you would think that all, it's a yasam, and we have to be extra careful to paskin a halacha that shouldn't ba'avel them, that they should be treated properly. Sometimes someone goes to a din Torah with a powerful man in town, with the richest man in town, and the judge could be a little bit intimidated, or could sway a drop in the way. But what it wants to tell you, that when it comes to the immorality and you think that it has nothing to do with the before, there's no samach, that whole consideration of sensitivity should be just like by ger, yasam, and almana, should be by all the arroyos. And that is the reason. It sets our moral compass in a direction that we have to succeed in the application of sensitivity to all situations. We have to divest ourselves if we want to be an impartial judge. It means two friends say, I disagree with you. Let's go ask one of our other good friends, the third man who's supposed to adjudicate and decide who's right. He's friends with both of them. Can he be swayed, or could he have clear thinking to be able to properly address that which he is coming to and that which he's doing? Now, the Alshich HaKadosh says that the Alshich HaKadosh says that the pasuk in the beginning of our parsha says, Vayoreu Osanu Hamitzrim Vaye'an. The first psukim really talk about bikurim, that when a yid toiled and planted and sowed and harvested and put his whole sweat into a field, he had to take the fruits, the first fruits, and bring it to Yerushalayim and give it to the Kohen. And it's called Vidui Meiser. He goes into a lengthy, like 8-9 psukim of a presentation before he handed the fruits to the Kohen, a history, a reminiscence of what happened to the Jewish people. And he starts off with Lavan Bikesh Lakoris Hakol, like we say at the Seder, and he gives a refreshing reminder to everyone standing there, because it was a very big assemblage, and they made a big deal in Yerushalayim about the Bikurim, that when somebody brought his things and came into Yerushalayim with the Bikurim, they were waiting and they were singing, and there was a whole procession that was a tremendous simcha. And the Alshich HaKadosh says that when this man was saying his Vidui Meiser and going through the entire litany of what they went through to come to Har Sinai and to be able to become a people of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one pasuk he says is Vayoreu Osanu Hamitzrim Vaye'anunu, that the Egyptians were bad. They made us bad and they afflicted us. That's his statement. So the Alshich HaKadosh asks that why does it say Vayoreu Osanu? It should say Vayareu Lanu. Because what does it mean to say that they were bad to us? That's Lanu. They were very, very bad to us. But what does it say? Vayareu Osanu, which really literally translated is, they made us bad. Not they were bad to us, but they made us bad. And the point being, says the Alshich, that when a person is in a situation that he lives with evil, he moves to a block because the house was a little cheaper, but the people on the block were very rough. No Edelkeit, you put your garbage can 2 inches into my area, and went after people with sharp tongues, razor sharp tongues, in handling of neighbors, of their children. Oh, the ball came in, your kids were playing in the back, it came into my yard again. I had to stand up and get the ball for them again because the fence was too big. We, after a while, we get some of that bad behavior, of that lack of sensitivity. So when we came with Yaakov Avinu, 70 people into Mitzrayim, we were Tahirim, we were Kedoshim, we were super sensitive in everything we said and we did. But when we stayed and we saw how people live and they were so bad people, it rubbed off Nebuch on us. And we became different people. And that's why the Pasuk says, Vayareu Osanu, that they made us bad, that they made us less than what we were when we came in, because we lived with it. And that's how important it is to choose neighbors. When someone does a shidduch, they don't want their child to come into a bad spirited family or atmosphere, and they'll do research or not, and sometimes they will not do the shidduch. They turn down the suggestion. Because they're looking for quality for their child to marry into. But sometimes we put priorities in other things. Oh, that house has a pool in the back. And the fact that there's going to be blasting music from the goy next door Shabbos afternoon that you and your family will have to listen to, or you're going to be part and parcel of a community or a shul that they're busy talking the whole Kriyas HaTorah. I remember the old scholar Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Levracha, who was a Kadosh Elyon. Like we knew every Shabbos morning when he made Kiddush, and he never ate from the food, his B'makom Suda was the second Revius of, he had a big kos, so the first Revius when you make Kiddush goes to fulfill the obligation of making Kiddush. But the second half, if you drink the whole cup and it's 7 ounces, you were Yoitza Kiddush and you were Yoitza B'makom Suda. Because to be Yoitza Kiddush, you either have to eat challah, or eat a mizonos, cookies or cake, or drink an extra revius of wine. And that's what the Scholar Rebbe did. And it used to pour over into his tots. And when the people lined up to say l'chaim to him Shabbos, and he gave his hand, some kissed his hand, some just took the hand. But if it was somebody who he looked at and he realized right away if they went to the mikveh that day or not, so and the tzibur knew it, and he never missed his mark. because the wise guy teenagers used to go up to the person sometimes and say, did you go to the mikveh today? Why? Because the Scholar Rebbe, after he touched his hand, used to dip his hand into the wine. That was the overflow in the tots, like washing Negelwasser. Because with his Ruach HaKodesh, he could take a look at the person, he knew right away. And there were many Rebbes, this old Skver Rebbe, he took a look at a person. If he didn't go to the mikveh before he came into him, he would give that person a bracha. You should have good machshava, and you should be zoichet tahara. He got a speech, and he was embarrassed from it, but the Rebbe didn't have to be told. He took one look, and he knew it. So the Scholar Rebbe once said, because there were a couple people on the side of the Beis Medrash who did a lot of talking during Kriyas Torah. And he said, my heart melts and cries for those of you who would talk during Chazoras Hashatz or Kriyas Torah, because if you knew or could see the midas hadin that you're bringing on you and your family, you would tie up your lips. You would be so afraid. It would be like you're sitting in a room, he said, and somebody runs in with a gun and points it to your wife or to your children. You wouldn't just take it as an everyday occurrence. You'd be shaking that the guy could pull the trigger and kill someone of your family, chas v'sholom. So a person cannot and has to have good influences. That's what the Alshich was saying. Because the influence of friends, people, community, neighborhoods, shuls, can influence you and drag you into the Midas Hadin, under the umbrella of Midas Hadin. But he also, the Alshich HaKadosh, asked an interesting question, a separate question. The Medrash says that there are 3 places that there's an inyan that the pasuk refers to that inyan as rachis. Like Bereshis bara Elokim, the first word. So the Medrash says, the Gemara talks about it, Bishvil Yisrael, Shenikra rachis. That means the world was created and there was a beginning for the fact that there would be a world to have Yidden in the world. Now there's a second rachis that refers to the Torah, Vayar rachis lo. Meaning that the world was created, that there should be a Torah, and that the standards of living in this world should be set and outlined by the Torah, its mitzvahs and learning Torah. And the third and final thing, it says that Bikurim is called in our parsha, Savo, V'lokachta mereishis pri ho'adama. So the Alshich HaKadosh asked the Klal Yisrael, we understand that's a backbone of the world. And the Torah, so Klal Yisrael and the Torah, that's, but if we went around a room of 1,000 people and we said that the first 2 things that the Medrash and the Torah talks about is the Torah and Klal Yisrael, what do you think the third rachis would be? And the Medrash says that the world was created for these 3 things. So we understand them, created for the Torah, created for Klal Yisrael, but created the world was created because of Bikurim? Of the 1,000 people, I don't know if anyone would say that the third reason that this world was created is because of Bikurim. That the man who worked his field and produced all the fruits came to the Kohen and brought it to the Bais HaMikdash. So ask the Alshich, why indeed is the third thing with such demarcation, with such rare and remarkable distinction? So he answers and says that the Gemara says that when rich people brought their Bikurim, they brought it in a vessel, in a vase, or in a vehicle, which was gold or silver. They were rich. They put it into a gorgeous one. But the poor people gathered some scattered leftover leaves and they made a little basket and put theirs in because they didn't have any silver, copper, or gold item to put it in. And the Gemara says that when the rich man presented the gold vessel, the basket, to the Kohen, they took out the fruits and gave the vessel, the silver, the gold, back to the person. But the poor man, they didn't give him back. They just took the whole caboodle, the cheap base and vehicle. And the Gemara says there, Basar Anyanusa, Ozil Anyanusa, that the poor get poorer and the rich guy gets richer because he got back his golden vessel. But the poor guy did not get his back. So explains the Alshich HaKadosh that the reason that the poor guy did not get back his vessel was because if they emptied out that vessel in front of the 300 people standing there, everyone would have seen and they would have showcased his poverty because they would have seen the fruits and also the basket, which was shabby and very, very poor. So to save the dignity and the honor and preserve the self-respect of that poor man, we didn't even take out the fruit. We just took it with that cheap basket because it would have gone anyway to the garbage or whatever, not to embarrass him. But the rich guy, he was happy to show off his silver, beautiful item. Says the Alshich HaKadosh, just like the world was created for Klal Yisrael and created for the Torah that was eventually given to teach people sensitivity and to maintain the honor of the poor and to people who have to be helped maintain their dignity. That's as important as the Torah, and it's as important as Klal Yisrael. So having a people that could learn Torah and blossom with all the exuding divrei Torah, if they don't have shining, magnificent sensitivities and midos, characteristics, then it was not worthy of the world being created. Powerful, powerful message from the Alshich HaKadosh. And as I say to you, there's only 6 or 7 who Klal Yisrael crowned with the title of Kadosh. the Shloah HaKadosh, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Rashi, the Alshich HaKadosh, that they were, and Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the only Tana who got the title Kadosh. So we have to internalize this beautiful thought of the Alshich HaKadosh and make it part and parcel of our daily lives. And think at the end of the day, was there anyone that we brushed off or that we made secondary because we didn't have the time and they weren't the most important person, or did we seize the moment to elevate their spirit, to smile, to say a good word, to ask warmly and sincerely, how are you? And want to hear the answer that the person should feel. He didn't just say, well, how are you, and run away, but he wanted to hear, how are you? And that feeling of being cared for and asking and listening makes the day of that person a lot different. Now, along the lines of what I just said before, the community affect the person, the Vilna Gaon says that the pasuk says at the end of our Sedra, V'ro'u kol amei ha'oretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha. And Rashi says, what does it mean that the world will see Hashem on you? Says Rashi, it means the tefillin. That when a goy will see you wearing tefillin, it's going to shake him up a little. That if he stops for the moment to notice what it is, that tefillin exude kedusha, exude prominence, exude a feeling of fear and love. And v'yaru mimeka, it will instill in them a component of fear for you, even if it's at a very minor level, by the tefillin that they see. And I've said to you on occasion that if a person is driving a car and he comes to a light and then it turns green and you see someone is trying to make a left turn from the right lane, and you see it, then you could assert yourself aggressively and show him he belongs in the left lane if he's making a left, not in the right lane. But and he could forcefully surge ahead. This guy's not getting ahead of me. But he's wearing a yarmulke and a beard. And if he gestures to the person who's to his right, making a left turn, to please go ahead of him, that's called Kiddush Hashem. The goy who's in that car that would maybe think differently of a yid, but when a yid does it for that second, no matter how bad he thinks of yidden, that Kiddush Hashem exudes a respect and an appreciation that dominate that moment and make that deep impression of the yid. And we have these type of things every day of our life. We're walking out of a store and we take the 10 seconds to hold the door for the guy behind you. Or someone elderly gets onto the train or onto the bus and you're sitting comfortably and the place is packed, but you stand up and offer the seat to the elderly person. All these things are a different attitude, that it doesn't have to be a pair of tefillin that causes an effect eternally on a goy or on a different yid who may not be frum. But we're able to have effect on our surroundings, by what we say, by what we do, and how we live. Now, in the Tochacha, it says, the Tochacha says, and that word, by the way, was from the Vilna Gaon, about affecting Saviva. The pasuk says, "Uvo alecha kol habrachos ha'ela v'hisigucha," that all these brachos that we're mentioning, because you know in our parsha, it says that the Kohanim and the Leviim stood in between the two mountains. And we know today which are the two mountains. People say, oh, that's Har Gerizim and that's Har Eival. That the brachos were heard and said with Har Gerizim and the klalos from Har Eival. And in between those two stood the Kohanim and the Leviim. And the pasuk says that all these brachos that you hear from Har Gerizim, that they're going to come on you because you're doing the proper thing and you're doing the mitzvahs and everything else. And v'hisigucha, they will reach you. And the Mefarshim, many of them asked, what do you mean v'hisigucha, and they will reach you? The brachas. If you're good, and the brachas are mentioned, then of course you'll end up benefiting by the brachos. But what do you mean v'hisigucha, they're going to reach you? Because many times a person is zoichet to a bracha and it never reaches him. That he has beautiful children. He was granted enough money to buy a comfortable house. He was able to give somebody a sandwich and a coffee and refresh the soul, the body of the person in making him happy. Yet he's at home every day complaining about the one or two or three things that he's having a problem. What are you complaining about? There are people crying their whole lives. They have no children. What are you crying about the fact that your child didn't do this or that? You have a beautiful child who is keeping the mitzvahs, who's a Shomer Shabbos, who's learning Torah. Why don't you recognize the positivity? So that person got a bracha, but it never reached him. Because in life, he's busy complaining every day of his life about whatever is a problem and whatever is bad. Sighing and sifting and never this and never. So you got the bracha, beautiful children, but it never was v'hisigucha, that you should wake up in the morning, Rabbanu Shalom, you gave me another day of health. And I woke up, and go into the hospital, you'll find how many people woke up in the morning and they can't move. And when you get done walking and finding out this one is here for this and for that, oh, do you thank the Rabbanu Shalom every step you take on that sidewalk back to your car? Thank you, Rabbanu Shalom, for this and for that. And we don't even know the depth of it because, like it says in Zohar Kadosh, that someone who davens erlich and even cries, like it says that the Yidden, why were they there 210 years? Because they were moaning and groaning, but they never cried to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in tefillah. But when it says in the pasuk Vayizaku, says the Zohar, oh, now they cried, and they really, with their words, it went into a different realm. That's when they after 210 years. So when a person davens erlich, and maybe he didn't even see results from that davening, But it could be that his Zainikel was in a car accident and he was supposed to die. And it's that tefillah from his Zayda 40 years before that was an Erlicha tefillah, and they thought it was for nothing because they didn't see that it worked, what they were davening for. But that grandson was saved. And when they come in, some people just say, okay, we were lucky, we were mazel that the 2 people were killed in the car, and they walked away untouched. But another person would run to shul to make a Suda Sodah and say that Birchas HaGoimel, the brach of benching Goimel, with such fervent kavana and attitude. Rabbanu Shalom, there was a cheshbon why I ran into another car and Baruch Hashem, no one was killed. It could have been a lot worse. Not to walk away, well, I was mazel dik Baruch Hashem, it didn't, you don't fully appreciate. So that's v'hisigucha, the Meforshim say, that they're able to realize the bracha of life in every aspect, because there is so much good. Now, the end of the parsha, after all of the curses, it says that if you still don't get the message, V'hashivcha Hashem Elokecha Mitzrayma Bo'anios. Now, if you take a look at the Toichacha, it gets worse and worse. You know, first you get a slap, one type of curse, then you get a bit worse slap, and to a point that you're eating your own kids, there's no food, there's this and that, terrible, terrible, lo aleinu, lo aleichem things happening, and it goes up in aggression. It gets worse and worse and worse, and the last thing it says is that after everything that we've said how bad it could get, that you're going to be returned to Mitzrayim in boats. Now, it's not good. No one wants to go back to slavery or return to Mitzrayim, but it's the last thing listed. So the Meforshim interestingly say that the worst thing humanly that could happen to a person is that he lives a life and at the end of 50 years he realizes it was a mistake. And that's why the Mitzrayim wanted them to build these pyramids and these things, and then at the end, after everything was done, 5 years of sweat and blood and work, they destroyed it in front of their eyes. Because there is no more demoralizing thing than to work and to work. Now, a person, let's say, is building his own new house, and it took him 20 years to do. So he worked hard, and he depleted his whole savings, but at least he has the house at the end. But if the day he finishes, and the next week he's supposed to move in, a storm comes and destroys to the ground through a fire or through a storm, the man is shattered. Not because of the loss of the money, but because the effort and the work and to go back to Mitzrayim and to have to be reminded of the demoralization, that there will be destruction of everything you did and worked for 210 years. The Mitzrayim didn't want to have the work of labor, the fruition of your efforts, to be used as a warehouse or a this or a that. They had it to have you work and sweat and bleed and be beaten up if you didn't do enough in one day, and then see everything destroyed. Demoralization. And when someone who's a Baal Tshuva says to me, you know, Rabbi, I can't live with myself. I'm Baruch Shem a Baal Tshuva, and I hope I'm keeping every mitzvah of the Torah, But when I think back to the fact that for 40 years or 20 years, different people are older and some are younger, Balei Tshuva, of my eating of treif, ham and cheese sandwiches for 30 years, I'm destroyed. I mean, I feel it was such a mistake in my life, metamtem the neshama, and all of these things that come from tarfus, and other averis and other things. How can I sleep at night? So I said you can sleep very, very well, because the Gemara says that b'makom shebalei tshuva oimdem ein tzadikim gemurim yecholim lamod, that even the biggest tzadikim cannot stand at the level of where you are. And why is that? Because these people, the Gemara says, if someone does tshuva meira out of fear, he comes to realize that there's a Rabbanu Shalom, this and that, and he does tshuva out of fear, his original averis, the sins, become a shoygeg. They're elevated from intentional to unintentional. But if someone does tshuva out of love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and out of simcha, that I'm part of your people and I'm this and that, and he does tshuva like that, every avera becomes a schus, becomes a full-fledged schus. So the Balei Tshuva who did averis and now their averis becomes schusim, plus they're doing the mitzvahs, their Balei Tshuva, they have both the 30 years of the treif that are now elevated and become schusim, and they have what they're doing now in keeping the Torah. But a tzaddik never did these averis. So he doesn't have 30 years of averis that now turn into mitzvahs. He has only the mitzvahs that he did his whole life, and that's why the Gemara says, "B'makom shebalei tshuva oimdim," where the balei tshuvas stand, ein tzadikim gemurim yecholim lamod, that the tzadikim can't get to that level, and that's how I answer these balei tshuva who bemoan their past, and it could destroy it. They become a lot of them become depressed from this machshava. But the fact is, I hope effectively when I get done telling them this Dvar Torah, that they walk away feeling a lot better about themselves. And the last thing that I want to share for this week's Parsha in Chodesh Elul, Parshas Ki Savo, is the pasuk before it begins with all the brachos and everything. It says, Ulasitcha El Yom. The pasuk says, and to have you roaming and designated in the highest of heights, Al Kol Hagoyim, Al Kol Kol Goyei Haaretz. So the Meforshim ask a question that after they said the brachas is the place to say that now that you've done such beautiful mitzvahs, you have achieved ascending heights that you wouldn't have had. So why does it say before they even talk about the brachas, Ulasitcha Elyon, and to place you in the heights of the realms of heaven, and then it tells you about the brachas? It should have been said afterwards, but it's the very first pasuk that introduces Klal Yisrael into the realm of brachos as the Torah then delineates. But the answer the Meforshim say, and it's very interesting, is that when a person sets off on his day, that he begins his day or his week or his month or his year, he should first set the goals very high. That means you should shoot for heaven, that you should hope that all of your efforts should be with such aspiration and goals that you would never think of. You would think, what? I'll settle for just this and settle for that. I'm not unrealistic. I'm not. You, the greatest of achievements in Olam Hazeh, by tzaddikim and by Roshei Yeshiva and Rabbanim, all came, like Reb Meir Shapiro said when he built his yeshiva, and he built it magnificently, like for a king. And people said, I mean, why are you so luxurious? And he said, B'nai Torah have to shoot high. They have to want the greatest and the best. And when they said to him, but it says that you're supposed to pas b'melech tochal, have a simple life with only dipping your bread into salt, and to ve'al ha'oretz tishon, and you should sleep on the ground, and that should be your bed. Reb Meir Shapiro answered them and said, oh no, that's a question, it's not a statement. Pas b'melech tochal? That's the derech of a yid who's keeping Torah mitzvahs? You're a king, you're the son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're the representative. You're the one making him happy each and every day. So why are you living and not deserving the best? And he was nifter, he was the one that started the Daf Yomi. He was only 36 when he passed away, but he built a magnificent edifice, because he said that's what B'nai Torah are worthy of and deserve. We should set our goals above and beyond, not less than what we can achieve, even if we think we can't achieve. Because many people realize that once you begin to climb the mountain and get to the top, no matter how high up it is, you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps, and we achieve those goals in many cases. Bracha v'atzlacha, Ashana Tova u'Mesuka, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should grant each and every one the beauty of the Geula Shlema, for Klal Yisrael to bask in the glory of Geula, and to be able to be riding Ulasitcha Elyon.